right, good evening, everybody. My name is Helen Dewey. I'm a volunteer with Medfield Environment Action, and I'm also a friend of the Medfield Energy Committee and on the TOMCAP Committee, which is the Town of Medfield Climate Action Plan. So we are hosting this webinar this evening. This is actually our second webinar entitled Medfield Decarbonizers, and we have kind of selected some of our fellow residents who have installed solar panels, have installed heat pumps, or drive or lease electric cars so that they can tell you all about their experiences. And hopefully, if you're interested in doing something like that in the near or recent future, then you'll get some information. So MEA, for those of you who don't know, is a grassroots organization of volunteers here in Medfield. We are basically, we want to be educating people about the climate emergency. And we've organized these webinars over the past 2 years. Our last Medfield Decarbonizer webinar was in 2020. And you can check out our website at meamedfield.org, where all of our previous webinars are recorded. In addition, this evening's webinar will be recorded and will be available on the website as well. Also, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, which is short and sweet, comes out monthly, and you can certainly sign up for that on the website as well. So tonight we're going to get started, and Fred Davis is going to be hosting, who is the chair of the Medfield Energy Committee.
Thanks, Helen. So I've was the chair for 3 years, and I've recently stepped down, but I'm happy to be doing this program. It's one of my most favoritist programs that we do. Thanks everybody for being here. And I'm going to test audience participation right now to see if you can push some button that shows response or raise hand or whatever to show appreciation for Helen. Put this all together. So I'm going to just do this. But if anybody knows how to do that or push buttons, that'd be great. And, attendees too. Do you have options, attendees? Raise hands and things like that. Okay, I see Helen Beatty raised a hand. Okay, hopefully that's to applaud. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Penny, for applauding. All right, so Helen, thank you for all this amazing work to get us here. I really appreciate it. Everyone really appreciates it. We have over 20 people participating at this point, and I encourage everyone and anyone to key in any questions that you have or that occurred to you during the program, and you can do that now. You can do it while the speakers are speaking, afterwards, whatever you want. We have experts standing by, so members of the Energy Committee are here to help with answers. It's amazing timing to do this program today. Why? It's an apex day for climate concern here and all around the world. It's probably, I haven't checked the thermometer in the last 10 minutes, but it's probably still over 90 degrees at 7:30 in Medfield. And worldwide, usually we have parts of the world that are parched. Today, at this point, we have a worldwide searing heat wave on at least 3 continents. Probably everyone here knows someone who's been experiencing over 100 degrees. It's a reminder of the dismal truth that we cause this global warming. But we're here, we're gathering together, 20 people here tonight because of a responsibility to rapidly decarbonize. Tonight, we will not be able to cover everything that needs to be shared about climate or decarbonization. For instance, we're not going to be able to cover everything that's happening at the state level. There's a crisis to pass climate legislation in this session. The Stretch Energy Code has just come out. We haven't time to deal with the federal level, what the president said today here in Somerset, Massachusetts, or at our utility, although we might have some comments there in the Q&A about the need to shave peak. But we are here tonight talking about decarbonization at the household level, yours, mine, and everyone here in Medfield, where it especially needs to happen. Decarbonization has to happen at the household level, and more Medfielders are decarbonizing, as we will hear tonight. Our 3-star decarbonizers will be sharing their unique stories about drastically reducing their carbon footprint. And everyone should realize by now, there are 3 principal measures that in our local environment are the major steps we can take to combat climate change. There are plenty of others, but these are the big ones. And without them, climate goals cannot be reached. And those three are EV, HPPV. EV, HPPV. EV means purchasing an electric vehicle when it's time to buy the next car. HP, installing heat pump heating before the furnace or boiler or AC needs major work. And PV, installing photovoltaics on the roof as soon as possible. Mark, Heidi, and Yuri will be presenting tonight about their stories. They are not experts, but they're Medfielders just like anyone else. They each have their stories about the motivations, the successes, and the issues that they faced along the way. And as I said before, please, folks, key in your questions as they occur to you. And MEC folks, MEA folks are welcome to, I encourage you to please key in answers as quickly as you can. And after the presentations, we'll go back and see what gaps we might still have in the Q&A. This is a homemade program. It's all about our homes. So keep that in mind. Nobody here is a professional, and nobody's expected to be. We'll also have a few minutes after the Q&A to ask whether everyone is on Sustainable Medfield, and we'll talk about lawn signs, yard signs, and we'll talk about Solarize Plus. Again, I thank everybody for putting all the effort in tonight. And one more time, a caveat, we're not doing training or tutorial. There's plenty of opportunities to get expert information out there. This is about our neighbors sharing, Medfielders decarbonizing. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. And Heidi is going to be our first speaker.
All right.
And
Hi,
take it
am I
away,
up?
Heidi. I will put on your slides after your talk.
Okay. Hi. So my name's Heidi Johnson. Thanks for coming out tonight to listen to us. I hope that we can inspire some of you to make the changes that we've made to help our planet. So my husband and I, actually, just before we got married, bought our house here 30 years ago. And actually, life changed drastically for us when our youngest was born with a spinal muscular atrophy and a neuromuscular disease that needed wheelchair for mobility. And our little 6-room farmhouse wasn't going to suit him with 13 stairs and nowhere to get in on his own, etc. So we were lucky recipients in our town of Extreme Makeover Home Edition, pairing up with our community and building us an accessible home for William. What was a little shocking about it, being fans of the show, we knew that meant that they could likely tear down our house and rebuild it for William's needs, which they did. It's amazing and a godsend. But what it did do was triple, even sometimes more than that, the expenses to run the house because the house size tripled. So we were faced with not lighting 6 rooms with little desk lamps and floor lamps, but instead paying for 99 recessed lights, and we had to count them for insurance. Just all the novelty of central air conditioning in 3,300 square feet, all these expenses that were sort of ballooning for our family. We talked endlessly about the show always seeming to build green. And I would say at the time, they didn't really do that for our build because they were focused on what the first thing they ever had done, which was a full basement for us, because most of their builds had been in climates like California, where building on slabs not a problem. But here in New England, you certainly do want a full basement to deal with freeze and all that. So we were very fortunate that that's what they focused on. We got a full basement. We feel fortunate for that, but they didn't focus on running the house in a greener way or dealing with those larger expenses. So we talked endlessly about, we have a perfect roof on our new garage facing south. We were surprised they didn't put solar panels. Why don't we do it? But with 3 young kids and medical expenses for our youngest William and just life in general, we didn't take the time or set aside and prioritize the budget to install solar panels. We just talked about it a lot. Our next door neighbor, who was a very green conscious individual, approached us a couple of years later and said, do you mind if I cut down some trees between our property? I'm going to be investigating, and getting solar panels. And we were like, we've always talked about that, never done it. And so she started the process and we kind of watched her. She cut down some trees. It seemed like it was moving along. And then suddenly she stopped and she told us that her whole plan had kind of failed because she was re-advised that it made no sense for her on her current rooftop to install panels that wouldn't be all that efficient and wouldn't pay back for her for some long period of time because they just didn't have the effectiveness with their angle to the sun. So that was kind of our first glimpse at it, but we knew our angle was a much better angle. We still just kind of sat on it until about 6 years ago when my husband was approached at a warehouse club by a solar company. And they just, said, hey, we'd love to sit down with your family. Have you ever thought about solar? And he's like, we've talked about it a ton. And he bit and he said, sure, come meet us. So this nice gentleman came to our home. We started talking about the options. He immediately wanted us to lease panels. And we were sort of like, what are the benefits for that? And he said, oh, well, your very sizable electric bill, which was running just shy of $400 on average monthly, would be, drastically reduced. And so we started talking about, well, wait a minute. So the savings and the tax benefits and all that are in fact your company's, not ours to benefit from. And then we just run this and what happens if we sell our home and all of that. So we sort of asked, we're more interested in learning about what it means to buy our own panels and put them on our house and have them be ours. So he gave us a presentation on that. And, we sort of thinking about it that night, we were like, okay, this is something we need to do. And oddly enough, the next morning, driving the kids to school, a friend of ours had a sign in her yard that was Solarized Medfield. And there was going to be a forum within a day or two where they were going to talk about what that meant. And we were like, well, what is the timing of that? That's amazing. So we went to this forum at Blake Middle School and heard what they had to do, what they had to say. And it was essentially that the town had already vetted a company to use, and that if more and more of our neighbors bit and got solar panels, we'd all reduce the cost for all of us, the more and more people that did it. So we spoke to that company that Medfield had sought out. And in fact, their pricing was much better than the warehouse club company that had approached us. And so we got jumped on the Solarized Medfield group and put 45 panels on top of our house to run our house. So it runs electricity, our electric dryer, our electric oven. We have a dual fuel oven. So the oven itself is electric, gas top for the top. And then we have gas heat still. And we have an elevator that we run for our son. Like there's a lot of, we charge his wheelchair, his breathing equipment, his oxygen equipment. We have lots of electrical needs. So we were feeling really good about it. So 45 panels went in because we took a home equity loan. And I will say right now, I feel like home equity, your home is valued higher than it probably has been in a long time here in our town. So it might be a nice time to consider taking out an equity loan to do this. When we met with the individuals from Solarized Medfield, it was Clean Energy of New England, or New England Clean Energy. They basically did an assessment of our rooftop and how effective the angles were, and with 45 panels, how much that would generate, and would that cover all of our usage needs. And they determined that 45 panels was the right amount. And that basically it would pay itself off with tax rebates and something called SRECs at the time, where the state is paying us to do renewable energy for them. And all of the benefits basically meant in 4.5 years, we would basically be making money every month because we lost our electric bill immediately. It disappeared the minute the panels went up, haven't had an electric bill since. And so now we're 5.5 years in, we paid off the equity loan with the money coming in from tax deductions, as well as the SRECs that came in quarterly. So in 4.5 years, it paid for itself. So if you're going to be in your home for that kind of time, again, ours, we had a really nice angle on our roof. We had 98% efficiency in its location to the sun. It's going to be different for everyone, but technology has changed as well. And perhaps they can prop things up or re-angle panels on roofs to help efficiency. So we were really thrilled that the efficiency continued. And actually, as the years have gone by, our kids have left, right? Because we're now empty nesters, or well, we just got one back from graduating college. But as the kids were disappearing and our usages were less, we noticed that we were getting credits into our electrical account with Eversource. And those credits were just piling up. And so it immediately told us, okay, the next step would be to make sure our next car that we purchase is an electric vehicle, so we can use those credits that we've already, basically gotten from the sun that are just piled up waiting to be used to power the car. And then as these 17-year-old systems all start failing on us, 2 weeks ago, our water heater failed. It was a gas-fired one, and now we have a heat pump variety that will be basically powered by the sun. As of Monday, our AC died. That has been electrical, but we'll look into a heat pump and how we might be able to also incorporate heat in the concept. So we'll be listening hard to Mark's stuff, just as potential buyers ourselves. But it's really exciting to think of all of the things that we've been powered just by the sun. So I love driving around in an EV for that. I love having our house, run by the power of the sun and not paying that bill every month. So these are our 45 panels on the screen. Again, our rooftop in our garage, where we have 24 of them, is an incredible angle to the sun and south-facing with no obstructions. So they get the highest amount of charge each day, but the high rooftops do well too. I would say when snow comes, that's our biggest bummer, because it can be a really sunny winter day, but if you've had snow and they're piled up, you need a strategy to get that snow off of them so that they can be efficient. And often it slides down, but that's one thing you have to think about. So this is just a demonstration of the information that we receive every day of what the power is coming from each of the panels on our roof. And when it's a little brighter, you can see that it's collecting more wattage. And they also give you charts to show you how you've done month over month, year over year. And it's just fun to track. I remember I was obsessed with watching how much we were getting from the sun every day at the start. And now I check probably once a month and just see year to year, month to month, how it's done and what, who's winning, who had the best month, what year. So it's just fun to watch the sun power all of these things that used to be large expenses for us, and know that we're making a difference as well with our footprint. So
Heidi, do I remember one number? Can you just remind us what 400 was?
Our electric bill. Yeah. A month. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what it isn't now?
Oh yeah, it's zero now. I mean, we actually still have $700 in credits. I think the highest it ever got was just shy of 1,300 in credits, because we just weren't using what the sun was producing for us. And we were told by people that we could actually, someone said that you can gift your credits. You're not going to get, the electric company wasn't going to pay us money for those credits, but we could gift it to someone, like a neighbor, a family member. Someone even said you could gift it to your church if you had extra credits. We just kind of hung on to them, knowing that we were thinking about things like heat pumps in the future, electric cars in the future. And so it's been really fun to, again, power our car fully by the sun. And
I look forward to hearing back as you start pulling down that mound of credits as you electrify other things. It'll be fascinating.
Yeah. And we keep making great, sunny days like this. They're hot out there, and but every day it's sunny, I'm thrilled. So, and I think with climate change, we're going to see a lot more of Mr. Sun, and this is going to be a more and more powerful tool for us for energy.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was fantastic. And I will let you know and let everyone know that a whole bunch of questions have been coming in and getting answered.
Okay.
As you spoke, people have been putting questions in and getting them answered. So thank you so much, everyone, for doing that. I just have one question. Hilly, I don't know if you can adjust anything, but when I look, I see a question that says the question has been answered. But I don't see the questions. Do you have any answer for that, Hilly, quickly?
I think all the questions that are marked as answered are answered.
Understood. I'm just saying, for other people's benefits, they may not be able to see the question.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
I can see that they asked about snow removal, and it wasn't that difficult. We actually used we sprayed water up on the roof that was really the most trapped in snow. because the angle's a little less of a slope. So we sprayed water up there to get the snow down, and it worked once the sun was beaming and all of that.
Are
And
you talking about regular snowfall or a particular snow dam?
No, just regular snowfall, because they'll get covered as we get snow. Your rooftops covers, i.e. your solar panels are covered, and they do heat up faster than the average roof because of the reflective nature of them. And so again, the snow does kind of come right down off of them pretty quickly, usually after you've shoveled the walk. But the solar panels in our deep in our breezeway area have a different slope, and it's just a little, they're not as significantly facing the sun. So we found that we did have to get up there and remove snow if we wanted those to be useful during some of the snowier winter months.
So is it generally discouraged to go messing around with a roof with any apparatus or water? It's
Yeah,
generally
so-
discouraged. I'm glad it worked for you. And if we had an hour, we would get into all of that back and forth. But I just want to throw that in as
we would never scrape or use the snow rake or anything of that nature, but someone told us that you could just kind of squirt water on a high charge and it came right down, and it didn't seem to be much of a problem.
So Heidi, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next decarbonizer. Keep the program moving. So Yuri will be speaking next on EVs, electric vehicles. Thank you, Yuri. And I'll bring up your slides at the end of your portion.
So hello, folks. So I've been a Medfield resident since 2017. We moved here from Boston for school in suburban quietness. And immediately after we bought, and we were renters, and we bought our home here, and we the very next year we installed solar panels. My roof is much smaller because I own a duplex, only have 18 panels. But they provide for my house. They pretty much cover 95% of my electrical bill. So after installing solar panels, I started researching electric vehicles. And when I was talking to the company, I kind of future-proofed my solar installation because I ordered inverter with built-in charger. So when I'm charging at daytime, I am basically bypassing the grid, and I'm charging right from the sun, my electric car. But before I got into electric car, in 2015, I had a Toyota Camry. And I think in 15, 16, we had like a huge spike in the gas prices. And I traded it for Toyota Prius, just a regular Prius, which I was very happy with. And we moved with that car to Medfield and continued driving it. And as I said, I started researching electric vehicles. And at that time, the only really widely available were two, actually three. It was Chevy Bolt, was Nissan Leaf, and it was a Tesla Model S. And the Model 3 was introduced and had a huge backlog of orders, pretty much no tax credits and out of budget. So Nissan Leaf was, for me, no go. It's a smaller hatchback with rather limited electric range. And back in 2017-18, range anxiety was a thing. And there was not this abundance of fast chargers pretty much on all major highways as we see now. So I was kind of still doing my research, driving the Prius, purchased another Prius, and was a happy two Prius family. But the itch was there, and I was like looking at electric cars all the time, you know, driving by Tesla showroom, but I couldn't still like step over myself and get into the electric vehicles game, while some manufacturers have a tax credit of $7,500 and Tesla does not. It's like, oh, okay, I'll wait a little more. And then Volkswagen came about with their Volkswagen Ig4, which is an SUV of a size Audi Q3, Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4. You know, mid-size SUV for a regular family up to 2 kids. And I started looking at this vehicle, researching, signed up myself for the Facebook group of early adopters. People were talking, rumors, sharing videos, presentations, pros and cons. Got myself into this game, developed a desire for the vehicle, and finally I pulled the trigger and I put in my deposit of $100, I think late November of 2020. And the way the Volkswagen structured the order was you put a $100 deposit, then a couple months later they lock you into the production and you give them a little more money, and then you wait for your vehicle to be built and shipped from Europe into the United States. So when that moment came around probably February, they took another $400 and I developed like an itch. I just needed that car right now. And there were some reports of people really getting those first edition ID4s that had like special equipment and special price, fully loaded with some distinctive features. And I like, okay, I gotta get the car. So I started calling dealerships, going places. And as you know, some dealerships coming down, we have the vehicle on the lot. You come and the different person tells you it's on the boat. So I kind of got discouraged by that for a little bit. And then I found the vehicle at a small dealer in Fall River. And as we know, it was March, end of March of 2021. No one really kind of was thinking about future shortage of new cars, and no one really got into a game of overcharging people on new cars. And I was able to secure my vehicle $1,500 under MSRP, which was a big deal. And since that time, I'm driving this car. I work from home and my wife works from home. We got rid of our second vehicle and we just like a one electric vehicle family, and my other older Prius is driven by my oldest son. And we're very happy with the car. Everyone wants to drive it. My oldest son goes like, can I take your ID4? I was like, no, I'm gonna drive it. So I'm the early adopter that bought the Volkswagen ID4 in its first year. And a lot of folks say, don't buy the vehicle in the first model year and this and that and whatnot. I gambled and I bought the car, and I am very, very happy first EV owner. 26,000 miles later, I had no issues. But if you look online, people sharing issues, but people more talk about negative things than about the positive things. I've had a few, this is me participating in the Medfield car show this past, June? There was a lot of interest, but we had a Mustang Mach-E that basically was like a magnet. Everyone was near that vehicle. We love this vehicle. It provides us with ample range. We never had any issues with it except for one time when we went skiing in New Hampshire, and there was a very, very cold night. I think it was like 5 Fahrenheit or something. And I was looking for a charger, and I had to drive to fast charger to Lemadon, which was a big mistake. And I had to disable the heat to make it to the charger. And I actually was driving the last 4 miles at 0% on the battery and at 0 driving range. I was lucky because it was mostly downhill. And I had just like every window frozen in my car from me breathing out. And I had just like cleaned like a narrow strip in the windshield. So I could see where I'm going. That one time.
If I may interrupt, I just want to check what's the moral of that story. I'm trying to think. It's either don't go skiing in the winter, or always go downhill.
Well, skiing is going downhill, but the moral of the story: be better prepared. So this is me in the Dorchester Electrify America. fast charger. So my vehicle charges from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes. 80% gives me, if you go from 80 to 10%, which they, manufacturer suggests that you do not really go lower than that often, but you can. So this is more like, speaking of road trips, you should charge your vehicle on the fast chargers up to 80%, because if you go 80 to 100, it goes really slow. But the chargers are usually located so you can safely get to another charger with enough charge. For example,
So I'm sorry,
Boston,
you're before you go
corridor. Yes.
before you go too much further, between 10 and 80% is how many miles for you? About?
Between 10 and 80%, it's like highway, like normal load, it's like about 200 miles easy.
200 miles for 45 minutes at a
35.
rest stop.
35.
35. Got
Yeah.
it.
So
Cool.
it usually, I mean, I have kids, I make stops. So for me, it's a no-brainer. You stop at the gas, at the charging station. I still have the phantom memories of stopping at the gas station. And you basically, you go inside, you do, you buy your brakes, you buy a snack, or you quick bite, and you come back and your vehicle is ready to go. So Volkswagen Ig4 fun facts, there's not enough of them available for people. There are about 80,000 orders in the United States alone. And because of the ongoing war in Ukraine, there's some limitation on supplies, and the benefits. No tailpipe emissions, no more visits to a gas station. I actually unlearned how to use it. It's very, it's fun to drive, despite the fact that I have just a rear wheel drive. It only has a nominal 200 horsepower, but the acceleration is linear. So you experience it from the moment you step on the accelerator pedal.
Fantastic. So I am riveted by your narrative, and perhaps other people are also, because I'm not seeing other questions.
One more thing I would like to mention, that in Medfield a couple of months ago, behind the Bank of America, Electrify America, which is subsidiary of Volkswagen, and not really, but Volkswagen was punished by federal government for Dieselgate, and they were ordered to invest a lot of money in the charging station. So they basically established the Electrify America, and they built a station in Medfield recently. And Electrify America runs 100% on renewable energy. So if you have EV car, you go there, you're charging on renewables.
Cool. I would love to see if somebody wanted to put that in as a question that Penny could answer, or anybody can. How does that happen? In other words, how does Electrify America get 100% renewable?
Probably buying credits.
Yes, I can imagine too. Okay, so that was fantastic, and I'm sorry if it seems like I'm rushing anyone, but I know we have a full agenda, and again, we'll have time for Q&A if there are any more afterwards. But thank you very much, Yuri, and we're going to go next to Mark. He's going to talk to us about heat pump heating. Thank you, Mark, for being here.
Yeah, not a problem. I apologize if my voice is a little crackly. I'm getting over my first wave of COVID, so I'm broadcasting from my quarantine with my dog right now. So I am a Medfield resident. I've been here, I think, about 4 years, and we moved from Wayland. Wayland had a great housing boom, and we took advantage of that, and got out of Wayland and headed to a little more rustic area called Medfield. One of the things that we overlooked, I think, when we were house shopping, was that our old house had central AC, and the new house didn't. So we discovered pretty quickly that boy, it gets hot. And so looking around at the cost of getting central AC, it just, we kicked the can down the road. So for the first 3 years that we were here, we had, I want to say 6 window units. And so I still have them in my basement. I got to figure out how to recycle those. But every year I would dread putting them in, and every year I dread taking them out. And inevitably I'd look at the electric bill, and it would double from winter to summer. But it was kind of the cost of doing business. So last year we decided, okay, maybe we need to look at this again and see what the costs are. And of course the costs had come up, but because the Mass Save program was kind of changing a little bit, there were some advantage of to look at it again. And so I didn't know anything about this. I basically went and self-educated on how to do this. Luckily, my old neighbor from Wayland was an energy consultant who had moved away, and I was able to call him and ask him all sorts of crazy questions. But it all began with getting Mass Saves in here, because we wanted, ultimately, we knew we were going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, but we also knew that on the backside there was potentially $10,000 there if we played by their rules. So we had the Mass Saves guys come through during COVID, which was interesting. I think it was a very abbreviated, but they identified a bunch of things that we needed to do. We needed additional insulation in the attic. We needed some insulation in the basement. We had to have our vents kind of readjusted and redone. And I said, okay, great. And they gave me the paperwork, and they explained everything to me, and it went right over my head. So then I actually started calling HVAC consultants, and we got a lot of different quotes in. I went with some small companies, some medium-sized companies, some large companies, people that I saw in the neighborhood, who had trucks, in their driveway. We all had, so they all kind of came in and said more or less the same thing. So they gave us a bunch of different options, but they all said, go with a heat pump. And the advantage of the heat pump is that it's both heating and cooling. And, hey, you won't need to use your furnace anymore. And I said, okay, that's fine. I don't like paying the oil bill. So great. Let's talk about this. The decision points really came down to kind of what technology we wanted and how we wanted it kind of integrated with the house. We had a bunch of people come in and say, hey, let's put an air handler in your attic with vents down to each room on the second floor, and then splits on the first floor. Or another option was to go and run vents through the basement up to each room on the first floor. So that was the most expensive option, because it involves creating ductwork and having air handlers and all sorts of stuff like that. We also had some quotes that were just splits, and the splits are things that kind of hang on your wall. They're pretty popular. For the bedrooms, we were like, we didn't want necessarily to be staring at that, while you're laying in bed. So that wasn't necessarily a great option. But downstairs on our first floor, it was. What we did is we put a split on each side of the house, and it creates a circular kind of airflow, which is actually really nice. I just said it, and it cools the house, or heats the house, whatever I want it to do, in a very even format. So that's very nice. But for the second floor, we ended up going with ceiling cassettes. And the hard part about this was that it's not necessarily something that the HVAC people typically use a lot. So there was a little bit of risk. And some of the guys, you could tell, were really pitching to go with either an air handler or the split on the wall and kind of dissuading us from the ceiling. But
I'm gonna start show the pictures so people know what you're
yeah,
referring.
yeah. So the funny
Whoops.
thing was so the ceiling cassettes come down from on top. They are the guts of them are up in your attic. And so what you see is, you know, a plastic panel with a bunch of little blinky lights and some vents. And the good thing about that is that it's not on the wall. But the bad part of it, and this is what the HVAC guys were trying to dissuade us from, is that those actually have. So that one right there is a ceiling cassette in my office. And so what that is all the guts are up in the attic. It connects out to the heat pump which is downstairs on the side of the house. Yep. And so to run we have a 6-zone system now. We have 2 units on the first floor and 4 units on the second floor. What we do is we've got two heat pumps, and so each heat pump on that pump has to be doing the same thing. That was one of the aha moments. But you know, it's basically I can turn off when I work at home, so I can turn off the first floor or individual bedrooms when everyone leaves for work, and I can run a single ceiling cassette in my office and keep me warm or cold. And then, you know, I have it set that it comes on, you know, right before everyone comes home and heats up or cools the whole area. You know, I put this one in because I thought it was interesting. So if you look at June of last year, which is the first column on the far left, that was with running all my AC units individually. And then, you know, this year it went up a little bit. The green line is slightly up, but it's marginal differences, and that's probably because I didn't do enough to manage it. But my point is, you know, the whole reason that I did this was really around. While I have a green heart, it was really around convenience, and that's why I went into this. Now that I have it, I like to stare at this data and try to figure out how to adjust my profile and everything else to be different. But you know, the point is, you know, the main savings in all of this, because you know, at the end of the day, what I was trying to do was save a few bucks. Was I have not bought a tank of oil since February. We had our system installed in the first week of March. We still have our oil furnace here, and our hot water is still actually produced by that furnace. So here it is, July, almost August. I checked before yesterday to see what the tank was at. The tank has only used a quarter of the furnace has only used a quarter of the tank to create hot water since February 1st. So
Mark
I've
this.
missed all that oil hike that's going on right now. I missed all of it. When I bought my tank, it was still, you know, $3.89 or so. And so that spike up to $6 or $7 a gallon, I completely missed.
You made a brilliant move on oil futures.
Yes. So, you know,
so
I think
I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, I think you said that you learned something from attending a previous Medfield program about heat pumps.
Yeah, and so I didn't know anything about it. People just kind of kept on saying, "Oh, you got to get a heat pump," and I watched a couple of things, and it looked like black magic. That it was mysteriously sucking things out of air and creating heat out of negative degree temperatures. So once I had the system installed, I didn't really fully understand how to use it quite right. And so I actually found Fred. Fred was doing a session on heat pumps with a bunch of other notorieties from around the state. And I joined just to understand kind of what's best practice, right? And I think it's probably individualized for each house and each situation, living situation. But I found that there's a lot of information out there. It's a little difficult to find. So these groups and these, kind of what Yuri said, the user groups really serve as a tipping point for well, at least for me in making these decisions.
Right.
When this is all said and done, I'm hoping that I'm still waiting for my check, but I'm hoping that my Mass Saves check is going to be around $10,000. So it was well worth going through the program.
All right. And if anybody has any question as to whether they heard that number correctly, $10,000 from Mass Save, they can type it into the Q&A. They did hear it correct. It is $10,000 if you go whole house heat pump at this point. Fantastic. Okay, Mark, thank you so much. I think you addressed a lot of things that people were asking about earlier, and maybe people still have questions. Anyone who thinks they might have a good answer is welcome to try to answer any of the questions that come up. And I'll say again, for those that came in later, please, any questions at all about any of the three topics or anything else that's on your mind about climate, please feel free to type it into the Q&A, and I will ask Hilly in just a second to assess whether we've got some questions that are still hanging at this point, and we can cycle back to those. So I just want to say that it was Jim Nail who was our principal heat pump presenter. He is a Medfielder, and he is well known on the state level. That's who did that program. But I did want to just chime in here that one of the things that we could use here in Medfield is called a heat pump coach, which would be a very generous volunteer, and this is happening in many towns, but Medfield doesn't yet have one, but somebody who doesn't have to have a deep HVAC engineering degree, but knows enough or is interested enough to be savvy enough to talk with homeowners so that people's hands are held. Because, Mark, you're pointing out a significant gap in the marketplace at this point. Electric vehicles, not so much. Photovoltaics, not so much. Heat pumps, definitely, there's a gap in the marketplace. So a good way, not the only way, but a really good way to bridge that gap is with a heat pump coach. If anybody wants to consider being a heat pump coach for Medfield, let us know. That would be myself or Hilly or Helen. Okay, so Hilly, have you got a chance to assess where we are with Q&A?
Yeah, so we have 11 questions answered, and right now I'm trying to answer the remaining 3. And I apologize that, if I type in the answer and they go to answered, apparently people can't see them. Is that true? I should ask.
That's the case for me, except now I'm seeing different. Huh, weird. The first few says answered live, and I don't see the question, but then the remainder are looking good. So people can go in there and read the questions and answers. Great.
Okay. Great. Yeah, and I actually, Harshal, I'm sorry, I accidentally, instead of typing an answer, I pressed the answer live button. So I will actually answer this here. Your question is, you have, like many of us, you have forced hot water baseboard heating. I presume that is oil. And then you also have central AC that's aging. And you're asking if you installed a heat pump, how that would work. So you would put the heat pump instead of your AC compressor. And that system would use existing ductwork, most likely. And then you can use that ductwork to heat or cool your house. And if you still have, if you're worried about, not being able to heat your house in the depths of very cold, very, very cold days in the winter, you are allowed to keep under the current Mass Save program, you're allowed to keep your existing heating system, the baseboard hot water heat, to back up that system on the coldest days. And I hope that helps you. And you are in exactly the same boat as a lot of people in Medfield, me included. So I have a heat pump and I have baseboard heat still.
Yeah, and let me just tag in on that one. So that was the cold piece of it was something that I had to learn. Each of the manufacturers has a different rating that where they, a low temperature that they operate, they're still able to create heat at. I have a Mitsubishi, and I want to say that it goes down to 0. But some of the others, I know LG had a lower threshold, and Bosch had a higher threshold. But yeah, the whole idea is that if it ever got into multiple days of -degree weather, I could always just go and flip the switch and turn my oil heat back on.
Great. Are there questions? Let me prod the audience. Sorry. Let me prod the audience if I can. Are there specific questions for the stories that you heard from Heidi or Yuri or Mark? Everybody's situation is going to be different, but I'll tell you, every time we do a program like this, I've been doing many of them over the years, I'm always surprised by something from each speaker. So I hope everybody listened to the individual stories and learned something. So please keep the questions coming. Are there others that are hanging out there at this point, Hilly? Or should we move on to the rest of the program and then check one more time?
So I will quickly answer Tom's question. He was interested in solar, but his roof is not at a good angle and they have trees, and he's looking at a ground mount system. And he says that currently the town does not allow that to be installed because of the setbacks in the size. And he's wondering if anybody else had a similar experience, and whether there's initiative to change the regulations in town. Tom, I don't know if you're the only one, but I do know that there are people who have complained that their roofs aren't in a good location, and I would love to stay in touch with you, because if there's a lot of people that have this issue, I think the town should definitely look into modifying their those hurdles to including solar for every resident who wants them.
We can't really comment on zoning issues. I think that's
No.
Not our jurisdiction. All right, other questions, and I hope this system is working where people are keying in their questions. If we need to go to vocal, that's fine too. If people need to raise hands, we can do that.
I have a question here for Heidi.
Mhm.
Heidi, what finally brought you to the point of pulling the trigger to install solar?
So the electric bill was crazy. It had gotten so obscenely large, what is 3 times the size of what it had been. We run tons of things, the novelty of central air on electric bill, plus all of our son's equipment on electric. The house was just so expensive to run. And it was just kind of a freak thing that we had been talking and talking. The neighbor had sort of got us talking more seriously with her effort. And then when we ran into the gentleman at the wholesale club at BJ's, he was just like, are you interested in learning more? And so my husband just had a moment of like, yes, we should take this step. And then that opened our eyes to the signs all around town. It happened to be in the front yard of a friend's South Street home that said, Solarize Medfield. Are you thinking about solar? Come to this forum. And so those signs were probably around and we hadn't noticed them. And suddenly our heads were thinking solar panels and we saw the signs.
Heidi, this is beautiful. So I don't know if you intended this, Hilly, but that's a beautiful segue for two quick mentions that we're going to have. One about signs today, and one about another Solarize program. So Emily, if you're available, would you like to chime in about the next generation of Medfield Solarize?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for all the panelists. It's so helpful. I've recently gone through the process too of my solar panels are up and they're not operating yet, but it's so much information to go through, and having neighbors help with information is great. But I've been researching the past few months about if we could run another Solarize program for Medfield, just like the one that Heidi mentioned from 2016. I want to expand it so that it can also include heat pumps. But basically, I think Heidi described it well, that we want to select a single installer that is vetted by the town so that we know it's a great company and they're going to do a great job. And also, if there's a volume of projects, it's worth it for them to discount the pricing for Medfield residents so that hopefully a lot of residents will want to participate. I don't know the exact timeline of that yet, but stay tuned because I'm working on it and we're going to get it going as soon as we can. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Are you accumulating people's names and emails in the meantime?
Anyone can always contact me because I'll definitely keep track of you. If anyone's interested, let me know and I'll start putting you on a list to let you know as soon as I have news.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And speaking about lawn signs, who's talking about that?
Helen's going to talk about lawn signs. And also, if anybody does want to reach out to Emily, they can email meamedfield@gmail.com and I'll be sure to get that over to Emily. So we just launched this yard sign project. So we did have a slide. Do we have the slide that shows the pictures? So we have.
Right. Thank you. It's coming.
Okay. So we have 3 different yard signs, one for EVs, one for heat pumps, and one for solar. And it's basically, we just kind of want to highlight those people who have already done this, just like our decarbonizers that we've heard from tonight. So we're asking people that if you have done any of these measures, we'd love to highlight you. We would love to let all your neighbors know that you've done it so that you can be, a spokesperson and it'll be a conversation starter if you have this on your lawn. So we're trying to keep them up for, just about 2 or 3 weeks probably. So if anybody is interested, you can certainly email Kirsten or Peg at meamedfield@gmail.com and we will be sure to get you a yard sign. So that's it. Thank you.
Can I just ask, show of hands, has anybody who doesn't have one of these in their yard, has anybody noticed them? If you don't have one in your yard, have you noticed them in anybody else's yard? If you could just click on the raise hand. I'd love to see any hands there. Somebody's listening to what I said. Just also check to see if you're listening. If you have already seen a lawn sign of people who have done one of these measures, if you've noticed it anywhere in Medfield, please raise your hand. More hands are going up. That's good. And attendees, are you still here? If you're attending and you have seen one of these lawn signs on people's lawns anywhere around town, raise your hand. Okay, some hands are going up. That's great. Thank you so much. Put your hands up again, one more time. And okay, now you can take them down and I'll ask one more dumb question, which is if you already have done one of these actions, please raise your hand. And Helen and Hilly, if you can notice as fast as possible, because maybe everybody who deserves a lawn sign doesn't yet have one. So if you've already got an electric vehicle, or if you've already got a heat pump, or if you've already done photovoltaics, please do the raise hand thing. Push the button. All right, that's terrific. Keep going. If you've done one of those 3, if you could just push the button, we'll make sure you're on the list. We'll get in touch with you about lawn signs. And if you haven't yet done any of these, thank you so much for attending tonight. And I'm just going to take it as a given that everybody here is interested in pursuing those. Okay, we have a couple other things to mention. What am I forgetting, folks?
Sustainable Medfield.
Please, who's speaking about that?
Hi, Fred. It's Catherine.
Great,
Hi,
Catherine.
hi, everyone. I know a number of you, and it's great to see you, Yuri. Yuri was one of our great drivers for the electric vehicle show that we put on and the end of June. And we had a nice variety, I thought, which is useful. Different models for different needs. So I am one of the co-chairs at Sustainable Medfield, and we are a growing number of households and 26 local groups. Everybody from the Medfield Foundation to the Historical Society, Scouts, Memo, the transfer station, and of course our wonderful host this evening, MEA and the Medfield Energy Committee. And so we have an independently sourced information and direct links on our website to helpful websites such as a car buying guide, the latest energy rebates, all kinds of information, and we update it regularly. We're constantly going through, and my ask for you is to use this tool in order to measure the progress Medfield makes towards addressing climate change. The town needs each household to record the environmental actions they have taken. We are also interested in those you plan to take. So if you're like me, I don't own an electric vehicle, although I love cars, but I'm not ready to buy one. But on my to-do list is to buy an electric car next time. And so that is useful for us too, as we look forward and do our projections over the next 5 to 10 years. So please go to sustainablemedfield.org and click Take Action and click on what you've done and what you might be thinking about doing. I'd be surprised if you hadn't already taken a number of the actions there. So thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to be a pest and ask the audience one more question, following up on what Catherine was saying. How many people have already registered themselves, their household, on Sustainable Medfield? If you could push the raise hand thing, if you've already registered yourself on Sustainable Medfield. As Catherine was saying, we need everybody, whether you've done anything yet or you've done everything, both extremes and everything in between. So if you've already registered yourself on Sustainable Medfield, please do the raise hands. And Helen and Hilly, I know, are interested to track. And those that aren't raising their hands yet, as Catherine said, please, please, please go on Sustainable Medfield, see what a great resource it is, and just how valuable it is for yourself, but also for the whole town if you register your household. So that would be terrific. All right, I'm going to check back one more time to Hilly, see how we're doing with the questions and if anything else is hanging out there.
I don't think there's any new questions that are really, no, I think that we're good. And if somebody wants to ask another question, I'd be happy to put that out. But right now, I think they're all answered.
All right.
So Hilly, if I can just interrupt here, I just wanted to say we had our heating system assessed. It's about 20 years old, and we were wondering, is it still going strong? And we had our guy come out, and he said that they're basically only installing heat pumps now. Nobody wants we have a natural gas here, which is in the less bad category compared to other fuels, but still, they're not even bothering with the other ones anymore. I was encouraged.
That is very encouraging. And I wanted to get back to Harshal. They have their hot water, forced hot water is actually gas-based. And what I heard from contractors is that even if you have a really old system and you don't want to take it entirely down, just running the heat pumps for most of the time will extend the life of your old gas system if you need it for emergencies.
Good. I'm going to make two comments in the way of closing remarks, and then if there aren't other questions, we'll shut the meeting down in a couple minutes. Those have to do with EVs and Shave the Peak. These are two things in the news in the last couple of days. So there was a major, there's been numerous articles, but a major article in the Globe about the difficulties of finding an electric vehicle in the market right now. and it was by Sabrina Shankman, who I love everything she writes, and it was all good and all right, except it left a question hanging, talking about hanging questions, which was, well, gee, aren't other vehicles having difficulty also? In other words, supply chain issues, circuits, and chip availability. Isn't that causing difficulties for all vehicles? And so sure enough, the next day or the 2 days afterwards, I heard a talk at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, great organization. People should check it out. Mal Scourin is their principal transportation person, and she explicitly said exactly what I was wondering. She said, yes, it's a difficulty for all vehicles, not just electric vehicles. So there are plenty of horror stories out there about how difficult and long waits you have to find the electric vehicle you want, or the color you want, or any electric vehicle. But those issues are not applying to electric vehicles alone. So I want to get that out there to address those questions. Last and not least at all, again, Green Energy Consumers Alliance has a program about this, is Shave the Peak. That's what they call their program, but Eversource itself, and Penny is right here to correct me if I have it wrong, but Eversource has a program called Connected Solutions, and we're all in Eversource territory. And if we have a smart enough thermostat, and I think that's about it, we might be able to participate. And if Eversource can adjust our thermostats or tweak our thermostats a little bit when the peak is approaching, they say thank you very much with a small check for us. It's the check is not a big deal, but if a lot of people participate in connected solutions, it adds up to making a significant difference. Did I get that approximately correct, Penny?
You handled it perfectly. I would note that we have 150 megawatts of behind the meter demand assets, just as you described. So we have 150 megawatts of consumers out there who are allowing us to send a signal to their thermostat, and it adjusts a degree or two during the peak. We also have consumers who have battery storage, and we ask them to turn that on. So a lot of great connected solutions, and happy to have you join our program.
Thank you, Penny. Any other questions at this point? If not, I'm going to call the meeting to an end. I thank everybody for their attendance and for the decarbonizing that is happening and will be happening. Thank you, everyone.